everybody for attending. We're excited. We've changed a lot of things. We're hoping you like it. Please give us feedback. So let's get started. There we go. All right, so we're going to end up at 325 attendees here today with 100 first-time attendees. So we encourage you to engage, meet somebody new, talk about innovation and technology, which is our theme today. We went paperless this conference. No more program guide, no more agenda card for your badge holder. We want you to use the mobile app. So even if you go to the website and hit the agenda page, it's going to take you to the mobile app. So use that mobile app for the Q&A sessions. No more mic running. We're trying to get into the 21st century here at HEDNA. So we're excited to be trying all kinds of new things today. I do have to remind you of the HEDNA Code of Conduct. You are bound by the HEDNA Code of Conduct while you're here, so no disparaging comments or remarks. You can find the HEDNA Code of Conduct on the website or in the mobile app. Everybody needs to play nice the next couple of days. I do want to introduce our 2018 Board of Directors. If I can get the board to stand up and wave. Everybody put a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work goes into making this conference happen between the board and the volunteers. We had our conference chairs, Sebastian Leitner and Clive Wood. They put their heart and soul into this conference, so we want to give them a big thank you. Also, the staff from Callan, our association management company, we couldn't do it without them, so a big thank you to Callan for all their support. And of course, we couldn't do it without our sponsors. We had an overwhelming, tremendous amount of sponsors that wanted to support us this conference, and I want to give a big shout out and thank you to all of our sponsors. We couldn't make this happen without you, and the more sponsors we have, the more cool stuff we can do. So thank you for sending money our way to help support HEDNA. I don't know where I'm clicking at. And then this year, so we did a membership survey. For those of you that participated in our membership survey, I want to thank you for your feedback. Candid feedback is what we need to change and grow in HEDNA. So we have our Global Distribution Conference in Lisbon in June 4th through 6th. So hopefully you can attend that. And then we did listen to you about doing more events between the conferences. So we're doing regional networking events. We're going to try and do 12 this year. So we put the first 5 dates on the board for you, and you can look for that more information on that on the website. And that's it. I hope you guys have a great conference. I want to introduce our keynote speaker, who is Harper Reed. We're glad to have Harper here today.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, indeed. I forgot it was morning. Okay, so my slides should be here in a second. Are you ready? Hello. Hello. So, let me make sure this clicks. There we go. Okay. So, anyway, my name is Harper, and I'm here to tell you some exciting things today. But first, I wanted you all to follow me on Twitter. They asked, would you come and speak? And I was like, yes, this is my social media strategy. It doesn't work very well, but I would love to continue the conversation. Really, if there's any questions or anything else that comes up, please hit me up on Twitter. Today I'm going to talk about a couple things. Specifically, I'm going to be talking a little bit about data and kind of some of the ways we use data, and the future of product design is one of my favorite topics. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about my favorite topic in the entire world, which is myself. So, how many people know who these folks are? Everyone? Okay, so for those of you who don't, it's Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and some other guy. They were kind of the inventors of the personal computer. In fact, the Apple IIc was the first computer that I had as a young person. Has anyone here read this book? Okay, 1 or 2 people. So this book I read when I was about 13, and it blew my mind. It was this idea, all these really great ideas sharing, openness, collaboration, this idea of engaging in the hands-on imperative, which I don't really know what that means because I copied this from Wikipedia. But it was like this really big idea of how do we work together? And it shows the history of all this stuff, and it really shows the foundations of the industry that I work in, that many of us also work on, which is technology. It also, because I read this when I was 13, I ran to my mother and I said, "Mom, I'm a hacker." And she was just like, "Oh boy." I'm a classically trained programmer, computer science and all that nonsense. Around 2005 or something, I ran into this company, Threadless. Does anyone here know Threadless? Okay, a handful of people. So Threadless is interesting. I worked there for a while, but the interesting thing about it is they accidentally invented crowdsourcing. And the interesting thing about accidentally inventing crowdsourcing is we had no idea what it was when we invented it. I say that because we went to MIT for a conference much like this, and they introduced us onto the stage. We walked on the stage, and they said, "This is Threadless." They invented crowdsourcing, and we were just like, "Crowd what?" We had literally no idea, because for us, all we wanted to do is make this into that. Just make really nice, really easy shirts. And we had some very small, simple steps, which were 4 steps, really. The first one was design. It says this is crowdsourcing. We used the crowd, much like y'all, and we had you design a really great shirt. Then you would submit that to Threadless, and then that submission would then be voted on by all of y'all. And then the best part, cash money would fall from the ceiling into our pockets. This worked out really well. It was easy. And so what we did is, I'm having a hard time with this clicker. Let me see if I can, okay, there we are. So what we did, none of the hard work, because it was crowdsourcing, because this crowd, this people like you, all we did is the really important part of facilitating the transaction or taking the money. Everyone else did the hard stuff, product design, making sure we were on the edge of trends, all that fun stuff. And around 2009, I realized I had accomplished all of my goals, so I did the thing that I want all of you to do with me today, which is I quit my job. Who's in? Okay, we have a few people. Meet afterwards, we'll start a company. And after this, I went on a vision quest. Do y'all know what a vision quest is? Anyone? So a vision quest is this interesting idea where you go into the desert, and I think you do a lot of drugs, and you find a spirit animal. I did not do that. I joined a venture firm, which is similar, maybe. My goal was not to find a spirit animal, was more to figure out how do you build companies that last forever. I didn't actually find that answer. Instead, what I found, or they found me, actually this guy right here, Michael Slaby, who's the CTO of the Obama campaign in 2008. Michael Slaby, this is, my favorite part about Michael Slaby is this is what he looks like at like Sunday at 3 a.m. Like he's always very, buttoned up, wears a blazer. He's a really, really great guy, one of the smartest people I know. Click. He was the CTO in 2008. And so this transition here that you'll see in a second when the clicker works. I don't know why this isn't working. Does anyone have any ideas? Battery, yeah. Ooh. So anyway, this transition here between him and I is actually really funny. And if I could go backwards, I could really show you. This is my official campaign photo because I was the CTO in 2012. My joke after this was that when I saw this photo, I was like, well, the next one will probably be a homeless person if we keep on this transition. The interesting thing about this was I was brought in here for a very specific thing. And the first question everyone asks is like, why you? Why were you brought in here? And of course, the first person to ask that question was my mother when I told her I got the job. She was like, but why you? And I was just like, come on, Mom, because I'm really good at this stuff. That is not a good enough answer. To really get down to it, you actually have to go from 2008 to 2012. In 2008, we were a startup. How many people here work for a startup? Okay, so the cool thing about startups is that they all die eventually. It's not the cool thing. That's actually the part that really sucks. And in 2008, that was our kind of thing. We didn't know if we were going to last 3 weeks, a week. We didn't know if we were going to make payroll. We didn't know if we were going to make it to the next poll. We had no idea. Whereas in 2012, we were this enterprise, this giant enterprise. We knew we were going to raise billions of dollars. And so we needed someone who was kind of more enterprisey to run this, someone who ran engineering before. And specifically, because we were hiring the first real engineers within politics in the United States, we needed engineers to do that engineering. And so we had a lot of these really great people that came in from all sorts of great companies. We had about 40 engineers on one of our bigger teams. And these are the companies that we hired from. Specifically, that's obviously the best one. But we had about 120 tech staff total. This was pretty much 10 times the tech staff that we had in 2008. And this is really interesting. One of the interesting things about this is we started from absolutely zero. So when I walked in April 2011, I was just like, okay, cool, where's our infrastructure? And they're just like, what? What are you talking about? And I was like, what about all this stuff from 2008? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because they literally had nothing. And we had 18 months to do this, so it was a very termed experience. And so we could focus on one thing and one thing only, and that was just execution. We just had to make sure it was done. Oh yeah, this is my cake. I always forget about this cake. So this cake, one of our engineers brought in for us right before Election Day, and just kind of set it on the table, maybe a week before Election Day, and everyone just looked at it and was like, we can't eat this right now, we're all superstitious. What if we eat the cake and then we lose? Maybe it was because we ate the cake. So no one else obviously ate the cake, and then we won, and then they ate the cake, which was like a week old at that point in time, which was way sketchier, I thought. I like that I say that as if I was rational too. I probably had a rally cap on and the whole bit. So, if I can click forward. Oh, there we go. So, to focus on execution, we built a platform. And this is actually where things get really interesting, because this platform we called Narwhal. And Narwhal, first of all, this is our lesson in don't name things code names. We thought we were really clever calling it Narwhal, because we were like, no one will want to know what that is. Turns out everyone wanted to know what that was, the press, etc. Oh yeah, this is my boss, photoshopped as a narwhal. And here he is in a second. Clicker. There's his Harry Potter. So the campaign was really, really stressful. And we had all these really insane kind of experiences. And because it was so stressful, because there was so much, I mean, we've all been in those situations where it's like the most stressful thing you've ever experienced. And what I thought is, how do I bring it down a couple notches? It can still be stressful and important, but we can laugh. And so I would put these at the end of my presentations. And I would just kind of say, like, you know, it'd have a little thought bubble right there. And it would just say, questions? And the question was always like this, but I was like, yeah. And they would be like, what's wrong with you? That was always the question. So anyway, Narwhal was this idea, this concept, right? That we would have this API that powered everything as our foundation. And that foundation would give us the freedom to actually build the things that were really important. We didn't have to figure out what the glue was. We could actually focus on these products that were hugely important for our teams, for our volunteers, and actually would help us get to the end. One of our biggest innovations was data. We use data for everything. Data was a huge opportunity for us. The media really loved data. Here's a Google query that I did right after the campaign. It's pretty boring, actually. Let's make it more exciting. Let's go in and throw micro-targeting. Everyone here know micro-targeting? This is like, obviously, I love that. This is a great crowd for micro-targeting. This is like email and micro-targeting is our thing, right? I love it. Anyway, micro-targeting, let's zoom in here though. Enhance. I don't know what that means. Why do they call it that? I see it. But this is a great photo from the internet. This is a horse holding a cat on a boat. So all this means, and we'll have that up there, is that micro-targeting is really exciting. Like, no one really knows what micro-targeting is when you talk with the media, the press, etc. But those of us that use it, we know that this is a really great opportunity for us to do very good personalization. I always put this presentation, when I do this presentation or any presentation like this, I like to put this slide up. Because what this slide represents is that this tweet was done in 2008, and it just basically is saying we send a lot of emails. Well, we all send a lot of emails because emails work. And we always think, what is that next technology that's going to replace email? And I just said, like, well, until email stops working, we should do that, but it really works well. Here's one of the emails that I received in 2012. There's a couple interesting things about this email. The first one is at $56. So what we did is we went through and looked at all my contributions, all my participation previously, and used analytics and data to determine what amount of money was I likely to give in that contribution. And we sent me an email that says, Harper, will you give $56? I looked at that and said, of course I will. And I clicked that button immediately. The second innovation is actually the biggest one, which is we'd already saved everyone's credit cards. So when I clicked that quick donate $56 link right there, I immediately took the money from my bank account. It's weird that I said I immediately took. We immediately took the money from my bank account. We did not ask, are you sure? Now, everyone kind of laughs, but I've booked tickets before, and I've booked hotels, and y'all ask, are you sure, a lot. We had $256 million of lift because we stopped asking, are you sure? We raised like $700 million total, so that's a pretty big lift online. So I would recommend stop asking, are you sure? The other thing we did is we integrated with Facebook data. I actually think for the most part that social media is kind of boring as we have it now. You know, Facebook groups, all this stuff is important for some things, but I don't think it actually solves a lot of the big problems. But so what we did is we threw our Facebook login there. We went ahead and had this thing right here where we took, this is another email I received, we took all the Facebook data. And how many people are on Facebook? Okay, good. So when you have your Facebook, you all have that friend that likes every single status update, right? And it's also your parents, but you also have the friends that do it. And then you have that same friend, you put all those people in a bucket, and then you have that, you take one person in there that you're tagged in pictures, you're tagged in locations, and through all this data that we had, all those friends that updated, liked every status update, we were able to determine your literal best friend, just through data analytics. And this was a really great model. Right here, John Ruth, this is my literal best friend that I grew up with, very, very close. And all this says, it takes that Facebook data, merges it into an email, sends me an email and says, hey, why don't you call this person that you're really close to? We'll talk a little bit later about how this could be creepy, but it worked out really, really well for us. SMS also worked really well. I was very concerned about SMS because I thought it was going to work out kind of like this, but actually it turned out, it worked out so well that we used it on New Year's Eve, and I'm pretty sure it turned out like that. So, all this stuff, you know, one of my favorite stories, though, is actually about our emails. I love email. I don't like sending or receiving emails, but I love everything about email. One of my favorite stories about email is, well, first of all, we did about $640 million with email, which is pretty good. But one of my favorite stories about email is about the president, who you all know, and how he is presidential, and he's not supposed to say, hey, because the president doesn't say hey. The president apparently would say salutations at this time, and so, or something like that. And so what happened is the email team, which is this amazing team, was like, hey, we need a subject line that says hey. This was a controversial idea, that president doesn't say hey, and we were like, yeah, because we're talking about brand at this point in time. We're talking about, well, this is the tone of the brand doesn't say hey. And so we were like, well, let's test it. So we sent out this, you know, of course, this multivariate test with email subject lines, etc. Came back that the hey email raised way more money than any other email. So we were like, oh, maybe the president does say hey. The lesson for me here was very clearly that our brands are very precious to us. It's very important that we have these brands, but sometimes they're so precious we're not seeing past them. We're not understanding that we can use testing to our closest audience to figure out where the brand should go. And this was really interesting, especially because we're talking about the President of the United States. And so every brand can use this can use email, whatever it is, just to figure out where should this brand go. So data really helped. It allowed us to raise boatloads of dollars, better content distribution, more efficient voter contact, and it was really great. On election day, everything was pretty chill. I took this photo, I would walk in and this was right on the wall, and I was like, oh, good idea. You know, we kind of, I wouldn't say relaxed, but, you know, obviously everything worked and we ended up winning, which was good. Right after that, I did another vision quest. Once again, of course, no drugs, no nothing, just really hanging out. And I decided, you know, what are we going to do next? And I thought, you know, well, we were going to build a company. I like naming things after myself, and so we had this very simple goal where we were thinking about all the things we've done for the past 15 years in e-commerce, which is really what I do. And over the last 15 years in e-commerce, we decided that the only thing we had focused on was really the back end. We haven't focused much on the user experience. And so how do we change that to focus on the user? How do we start thinking about, you know, what are the things that a user wants? Well, they want a better experience, a quicker experience, but more importantly, they want a mobile experience. And these are all the things that really resonated with us. We built this startup, we started about 2013, we built it, we launched, and then we had a very quick cheat code to scale, which is we sold it to PayPal. So those of you with a startup, if you're looking for a cheat code, that's a great one. Worked out really well. And that product's called PayPal Commerce. But I'm actually not here to talk about that at all, because this is an e-commerce. I'm here to talk about some data rules. So that was my intro. Thank you. So here's some of the rules that we have for data. How do we use data? And I like to say that the first thing is often advice. You get advice from people like me, or you get advice in your career. All this is what lottery numbers worked for me. So listen to it. If it works, great. If not, that's fine. Well, here we go. So the first thing is about data. Right now in data, we talk a lot about big data. Well, there's a lot of marketing hype on this. And the thing about it, where it starts, is this conversation about big data. Y'all have heard about big data, right? Everyone talks about big data. Well, the thing about big data is honestly, it's bullshit. You know, I really, the reason is the big. The big is actually the problem, because we're really just talking about data. And honestly, for the most part, there's very few industries that actually have the big requirement. But the people who are telling us about that big are the storage companies, because they want us to be scared that our data won't be stored properly, won't be fast enough or accessible. Well, this is for the most part solved, and it is way cheaper. In 2007, I remember being here in Austin and meeting up at this big data meeting, and we were talking literally about storage. We weren't actually talking about the important thing, which is questions and answers, like the analysis. And so when you get that flyer, that email, and it's like big data solutions, look for the part about the answers. If it's not talking about analysis, or it's not talking about big answers, then really it's just marketing about storage. And you can archive it, throw it away. And one of the things that I always like is this story of, well, y'all know what this is, right? Everyone knows what this is? Who here uses Excel? Actually, who doesn't use Excel? So my partner is a tax accountant, and I'm telling her, I'm always like, hey, do you use if-thens? Does anyone here use if-thens in Excel? Okay, so that means you're programmers. This is the thing, Excel is one of the most widely distributed programming platforms made. The reason it's there, and the reason is because, for the most part, Excel always works. It always works. On the campaign, we had this unlimited budget to do analytics. So we had every single tool you could imagine, and almost every one of our analysts used Excel. And we used Tableau, but everything went to Excel at some point in time, because that was an easy-to-use platform that anyone could consume. Because usability is a big deal, and it works. The other thing that I often talk to e-commerce companies, I'm pretty sure it's similar in this industry as well, but we have to be really clear about conversion. This is something that, even though we talk about it a lot, I find if you get in a room and you say, okay, what is conversion? There's a chance that every person is going to have a different answer. What conversion means for your product. Is it click-through? Is it signing up? Is it actually converting on a purchase? Is it the second time? Like, all these things are conversion, but we don't have a clear view of what that is. And so if you don't have an idea of what conversion means for your industry, for your company, for whatever, it's very hard to have a very solid use of data to back that up. And I think this is funny, actually, because so many companies just don't know. And then they use this thing where they start to do crazy things with that data. And I say that change must be defensible, and we can use data to defend that change. So when we say, this is something I want to do, let's use data to back that up. And as we all love data, so you have to trust the data, right? That's really important. But also, because it's data, you have to be skeptical of it. And I like to think of this as, oh, do y'all know this movie? Groundhog Day, right? This is how you trust and be skeptical of data at the same time. So this movie is the best movie in the world about multivariate testing. So this dude just sits in this world, for those of you who haven't seen it, and he just tests his way out of it. And there's a website some guy wrote up about how long was he in this world. And I think he was in this world for about 700 years. So like all of us, he wasn't very good at testing. But the thing is it really is just about iterating. Repeat everything over and over and over again. One of my favorite lessons, both from the startup and from the Obama campaign, is when you say, okay, we got this test, we got the results, and you're like, great, now I know. And the next day you do the same test and the results are different. That is so frustrating. But if you figure out the infrastructure to do those tests every single day, you'll be far ahead of all the competitors who have not. And it's not that hard. So there's two quotations that always drive me when I think about data. First of all, if there isn't a metric, it doesn't exist. This goes back to that change must be defensible. So when you're having a conversation with one of your coworkers, or with a partner or whomever, and there's this idea of we should do X, if there isn't data behind it, you can just walk away. Might not be as easy as that, but typically this is from Jim Messina, who is my boss on the Obama campaign, and he really meant it. If there wasn't a metric, the conversation is worthless. And so we would, if someone said, hey, we should do this, and we're like, well, how are we measuring this? What is the data behind this? And if it didn't work, we would just leave, because we had other things to do until there was that data to back that up. The other one is from Etsy, which is some good friends. If it moves, you should graph it. I really love this idea where you have this data, you don't really know what's going on with it, but you notice it changes. So how do you just throw that on a graph and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait. Then you start comparing graphs. You're like, oh wait. Then you start to understand the relationship of that data with some other data. And this is why dashboards, I think, should be in everyone's office. Not just, the ops people, not just the tech folks. You can tell so much from a good dashboard. Here's something that is really near and dear to my heart, which is that we should track all of the data. But actually, I don't think we should track all the data, we just need to track enough data. I changed that when I kind of graduated from the Obama campaign. I was like, we should track everything, this is awesome. But then I started to think about it. Just because storage is solved doesn't mean we should be the ones that are tracking everything, because every single data point we have largely ends up at a person. There's a person there. And if we're not thinking about them as a person, then what happens is what's actually very fashionable right now, which is we have data problems. We have hacks, breaches, creepy things. Does everyone know the Target story? Who doesn't know the Target story? Okay, there's 2 or 3 people, so I'll quickly say it. So the Target story is basically this. A young woman received a direct mailer, and it was just like, you're pregnant, yay, here's things to buy, from Target. And the young woman's father was like, WTF, why are you sending my daughter this? And so he goes to the Target store and is like, this is terrible. You should not send this to my young daughter. It's inappropriate, and that's that. Then like 3 or 4 weeks later, the manager calls up the guy and is like, hey, I just want to make sure you got no more mailers. And the guy's like, funny thing, my daughter was pregnant. But she didn't know at that time. So what Target had done is to create this really amazing analytics model based on like non-scented lotions and whatnot, and was able to tell when someone was pregnant. So the lesson here is really pretty straightforward, right? We have amazing models. We have all of these amazing models that tell us amazing things about our consumers, our customers, our partners, etc. But there's a way out of this. It's not that you abandon these crazy, creepy models. It's that you don't actually mix the creative and the data, or you don't forget to mix it. Because basically what Target was doing is their direct mailer basically said, look at this cool model I have. That could be the title. And it could have just been sent to us, and we would have been like, wow, that is a cool model. And that would have been just as effective. So what you do is, what Target should do now, which they probably do, is instead of broadcasting and bragging that they have this crazy model, they should just be like, here's your summer grill and direct mailer, and on it, just in the corner, it's like, do you want some, some of this, or whatever. And this worked really well because it's really interesting. And the second thing here is this fashionable thing that we're all doing these days, which is getting hacked. We should stop that. And this graph here is since 2013. The thing is, I stopped updating this. I'd always try and get a really updated one. I stopped doing it because everyone was just getting hacked so fast. Like OPM isn't up here, Equifax isn't up here, because it would just take up the whole screen. Well, the thing here is that for the most part, it's really important, obviously, but it's actually your responsibility on these people. Once again, thinking about the people. When we're collecting data where every point is a person, we have to make sure that we're protecting that as if that is ourselves. And we don't do that. And this is something we have to change. But finally, obviously, once again, going back to the big answers and big questions, the real key here is just focus on the question and get that answer. And this is obviously the biggest data you've seen. We're all Star Trek fans. It's awkwardly on the screen for a long time because the clicker is clicking. But data's our friend. We can do this. So the next thing I want to talk about is the rules for product design. And this is actually a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I love building products. And I'm just going to jump right in. The first thing that we got to make sure is all of our products have to be fast. And when I say fast, I don't actually mean fast from that Gartner report sort of way. We're talking about seconds or nanoseconds or whatever. I'm actually talking about intent. How do you allow the user to get what they want faster? Now that doesn't mean that your web servers are faster. This means that the user feels like they're getting exactly what they want. They're following it to get an example would be the quick donate button I showed earlier. All I want to do is give money. Why, as the Obama campaign, would I then ask, are you sure? Because I said, by clicking that link, I said, I want to give money. So just take the money. This is such a funny, this is like 6 years later and everyone's like, that's crazy. It's not crazy. This is such a good idea. Another one is simplicity. Simplicity is really interesting as well, because we talk a lot about simplicity, but it's impossible. Making a simple interface is very difficult because we all have very complex worlds, right? Everything is, we have requirements, we have all these various things, and here's my rule for simplicity. Very simple. Don't be clever. Anyone here clever? Anyone? I don't believe that. There's always one person that's like, I'm clever. The thing is, that person will die before the rest of us. And here's another test for cleverness. Okay, so you're talking to your tax accountant, and they say, I have a clever idea. What do? You're not like, yeah, I love being clever. But that's how we treat our users. We always talk about, oh, this is very clever, this is very ingenious, I'm so smart. Because clever is about us, not them. We need to be thinking about how are we creating these very simple user experiences. And I actually think the only way to do that is just invest in user experience. Aggressively. Think about, how many user experience people are here? One? That's pretty typical. How many people here have customers? Weird. So the thing about user experience is it's the difference between functional and usable. That's the thing. Weird, right? Now, just to make you feel better, I've talked about user experience in different formats many times. And this is the problem with every single group I talk to, whether it's 4 people at a company or a startup, or whether it's 1,000 people or whatever. It really is, we just don't invest in user experience enough, just across every industry. And we don't talk to users. It's this weird thing where the only person that talks to users in this whole room is that guy over there. We could ask him what the users want. So the next thing, speaking of users, is how do we make a personalized experience? I always think about this as a signal-to-noise ratio problem. How do we focus on that signal-to-noise ratio to find out what the user wants, what they care about? But there's this other aspect of this, which is you can train the user. They're just like us. We can use all sorts of fun stuff to kind of guide them through a process. If we have a very complex funnel, how do we simplify that and then explain to them, hey, it's a very complex funnel, bear with us. Like train them, let them know what's at the end, give them that carrot. We often don't do that, we just jump them into this interface and just like figure it out. The next thing which helps a lot is delightful. I don't know what delightful means, but I like to think about this is how do we enhance serendipity of our interfaces? And I can see by the looks of some of your faces where you're just like, what are you talking about? That doesn't really make any sense. So let's put like those dentist posters up on the wall. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. If you ever see this at a dentist office, you should leave. You don't want to luck. That's not about dentists, but it seems like that type of thing. But serendipity is the same, right? So it's all about preparing your users for that eventual conversion opportunity. And so you have to create that opportunity for the user, going back to training them, putting them down that funnel and getting them to the end. But my favorite thing when it comes to product design, when you're thinking about building these amazing products, is repetition. We have to be able to do it over and over again. And for this, I'm going to actually go to one of my favorite people in the world, Kanye West. Who here likes Kanye West? Okay, good. A few people. More people should like Kanye West. Everyone thinks Kanye West's insane, which he may or may not be, I don't know. He says some things, though, that are amazing. One of the things he said a little while ago was this: innovation gets almost too much credit. And I, being a fan of Kanye West, was reading this interview and I read this, innovation gets almost too much credit. And I was just like, what could he mean? I'm known for being innovative. I like innovation. Like, I think this is something that I should pay attention to. So I was like, okay, Kanye, what do you mean? And he's like, well, there's no money in innovation. And I was just like, no, Kanye. There has to be money. Like, that's why we're here. We're here because there's money in innovation, right? And then he goes on. I don't know, I think he's talking about fashion, he might be talking about music. He said, the money is in repetition. And that really struck home to me. I really felt that. And the reason is because I, in around 2013, went to a European telecom. They walked me through this amazing experience they had. And it was this really cool thing where it was their innovation lab. It was huge. 5,000 square feet of all these innovative things. They were all dated like a museum piece. It'd be like, this is our competitor Sonos that we made 10 years before Sonos. This is our competitor Foursquare that we made 10 years before Foursquare. And it went on and on and on and on. Automotive stuff, all sorts of really amazing stuff, never launched. No one ever saw it. The products never left the innovation lab. That's not innovation. That's actually just a waste of everyone's time. And so innovation doesn't actually matter. We're going to talk a lot about innovation today. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is repetition. So when you're talking about those things that are innovative, we'll always think of how is this going to affect the customer and how are they going to use it over and over and over again. One of the things I always like to look at is the history of how technology has worked. And you always see these amazing startups, these companies, these projects, these partnerships that are some of the most innovative things we've ever seen. But they didn't get off the ground. And then someone comes up with something that's simpler or easier or less good, and it worked perfectly. And it's all about this idea of repetition. How do you weaponize that thing? And I don't have a good answer for your company, but I know that that is probably the most important thing for me when I think about product design. How do we repeat? Well, thanks everyone. That's my quick talk, and looking forward to some Q&A.
Some muscle men bringing our chairs onto the stage. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so I'm Tracy Mercer. I am with Sabre, and I have the privilege of being able to sit here and chat a bit with you, Harper, and ask you a few questions. I want to remind everyone that if you open up your app, you can have a cool dinging noise in the background. If you open up your app to the Insights in Innovation section, at the bottom of that section, there's a link to ask questions. You're seeing kind of the overview there. So please go ahead and go in and ask questions, okay? All right, Harper, that was amazing. That was a really great speech. I particularly liked the horse head holding the cat slide.
I love that thing. There's a handful of things that I when I do a talk, especially with a great audience, where I'm just like, I'm doing this for me. That was one of those things where I'm just like, there's a horse. I just love that picture. And I don't know why or where it's from.
Yeah, I could tell you loved it. I didn't necessarily see where it fit in, but it was great.
It just shows
brought us together.
How weird life is.
That's true. All right, so you touched on a lot of items, and I wanna come down to a few things. We've obviously got an audience full of people who are large companies, small companies, all in some element of the hospitality and distribution space. You have the experience of working in a startup and the experience of working in large enterprise environments. So I want to hear a little bit about innovation, big data, and some of the topics you talked about in those two different environments. What makes it hard? What makes it easy? Kind of pros and cons.
When I think about this, I often think about like what makes us hungry. I think that's where really this comes in. When you're at a startup, your hunger comes from a couple things. Your hunger comes from the excitement of getting to the next milestone, but your hunger also comes from not dying. And I think we shouldn't kind of ignore that aspect of a startup, that you don't actually know if it's going to work. You hope with all of your might. And as a CEO of a startup, I remember talking to my team, just saying everything is great. Not everything is great, we're going to succeed, but we're doing really well, we're doing really innovative stuff, knowing full well that our next round of funding was harder to raise. All these things that are on the back end that were fearful, but on the front end, you're just like this hunger to survive. At a big company, we don't have that. We've already survived, which I think is actually a problem because that isn't true. We see this a lot where these young companies come up and suddenly they're bigger than us, and it's very confusing. And I don't think that means that we need that hunger of survival brought into big companies. I just think we need to have an understanding of why are we here? What are we waking up? When I wake up in the morning, I work for PayPal. I really believe in PayPal fully, but when I wake up in the morning and think, oh yeah, building buy buttons, that's not super exciting. And so how do you change that? How do you change that for your culture of your company? How do you change that for your team? And I think it's all about, once again, and I'm going to just say this over and over again, it's all about the user, the consumer. When you engage in aggressive user experience research, regardless of your position, when you really go in there and you talk to that consumer, you start to understand that no, I'm not in the buy button mines with my pickaxe mining buy buttons. I'm actually changing these people's lives and allowing them and their businesses to grow. suddenly when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, okay, I'm waking up for this young woman in Chicago who literally wouldn't be able to feed her family unless she had this technology. That's cool. And I think that hunger is something that is the biggest difference. And I actually, it's a struggle. Like we haven't solved this, in the big companies I worked for. I've seen it solved on a team-wide. But I'd love to hear, maybe after how y'all have done this as well.
Right. That's a really good point. Having worked in small companies and big companies too, I definitely think there's a passion and a hunger that has to come through. So, as we think about the audience here, you've given some advice. One of them was that big data is bullshit. I think that was one piece of advice.
Big one.
Noted. Another piece of advice was basically, you idiot, stop asking, are you sure?
That's my favorite one. So that was my whole startup, was just like, stop asking if you're sure. So all we did is we made one-click checkout, which literally all you did is you click that and then we'd send it to you. And everyone was like, this is crazy. But it wasn't that crazy. It's all over the place. And only a small number of people do it. Just to reference one of the companies I saw in the audience, I remember when Hotel Tonight first launched and I used it and I was like, what the? I have a hotel room right now? And it was like, yeah, of course. It's not that hard to do with every single thing, especially if you know the customer. Now, if you don't know the customer, this suddenly gets very difficult. But for example, I fly a lot, so I'm global services on United. So you'd think United would know a lot about me. It still takes me a long time to book a ticket. They literally know every single thing about me. They have my entire family in their system. They could just be, I could just say, like, click my brother, Dylan, and click, Denver, Chicago, and it should be done. But no. And so there's so much low-hanging fruit here about how do you make it so we don't ask, are you sure? Now, my favorite experience here is to go to your favorite small e-commerce, just boutique or what have you, and buy something and figure out how many times are they asking, are you sure? So there's the button, there's when you enter your address, there's when you enter your email address, your phone number. Every single one of these are like, are you sure? And then there's that final page that I love where it puts all your information on the screen and says, just to make sure you're sure, look at all this information you put in and hit, are you sure again? And it's like, you probably are sure by the 30th time you entered your email address on that site. And so I don't understand. Now, I think the reason is why this is the world we live in is because of our friends, the lawyers. And we're worried about liability. Well, actually, if you couple removing are you sure with good customer service, this turns out not to be a problem.
Very good. All right, we're going to go to some of the questions that have been voted up on the app. And the top one is, who do you think is doing a great job today in repetition in e-commerce?
Well, there's obviously all of our enemy, Amazon, which is doing a really good job of everything.
Partner and
friend.
Frenemy.
I spend so much money on Amazon.com, it is uncomfortable to talk about.
They love you for that.
It is remarkable. And they do a good job. I'm actually expecting that. So I think there is a big opportunity for someone in the startup world to just relaunch direct mail, like the old school direct mail, like Time Life books. And
some of us in the audience haven't stopped that. Thank you very much.
Well, because it's the thing. If you just sent me a gadget, I'd just be like, oh yeah, gadgets, and open it, and then own it, and then require to pay you, right? Like I would not, there is such an opportunity for that right now. And if Amazon just preemptively sent me things, I would probably be like, I do need toilet paper, how did you know? But when you take out Amazon, actually I think the best e-commerce provider right now that I have worked with, although not much because it's expensive, is Farfetch. Anyone here use Farfetch? So Farfetch is an amazing provider that actually has a really cool story of connecting all these boutiques, powering their backends, powering the e-commerce, and then creating that kind of double-sided marketplace that we all think about in an app called Farfetch. You load it up. I bought these shoes on Farfetch. They came from Italy. They're not Italian. That was the way to get it. And it was free shipping. It's an amazing experience. It works very well. You feel good about it because you're supporting both small boutiques, and also you have an experience that is not BS. I spend a lot of time buying stuff. It's one of my biggest hobbies, and it's pretty interesting how no one is doing a good job. That doesn't mean we can't. It just means that I think we are prioritizing our comfort levels with our lawyers instead of our comfort levels with our users. And the other question is have you asked your consumers? Like let's say we made a big change. Have you ever thought about going and saying, hey, are you comfortable with this? What if we just preemptively sent you packages? Like, not everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah. But there might be, these people who are spending over this much money might be like, yeah, fine, that works. Or just me. So if anyone wants to launch the thing where they just send me packages, talk to me after.
All right, got it.
Also called mail, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's kind of old school retro, but it's okay, we can go back to that. So we have a few other questions. Now, I'm living in Texas. I've been here a year since I joined Sabre, and one of the rules in joining Texas, there was actually 3 of them. One was, don't talk religion, don't talk politics, and don't talk football, okay? Those are the 3 things, because basically football's a religion, and then politics is very divided right now. Well, the next question that got voted up is around politics. So let's talk a little about this. After the 2008 and 2012 elections, how do you explain what happened in 2016?
It's actually really easy, and I can break it down for you. No, it's super easy. Sadly, from my perspective, the United States did not want Hillary Clinton to be president.
That's the explanation.
That's the explanation. Now, there's obviously some more complicated things there. So
I feel like there's a bit more behind the scenes that you could really add as a CTO of a re-election campaign here.
So there's a lot there. I recommend, there's a handful of books that came out. One was called Shattered. I recommend reading it and then just taking about 50% of it as true. Because it's largely a gossip book made by reporters. It's not bad, and having been the kind of topic of a couple of these books, I know what it's, let's just say 50% true. But what that does, it actually paints the Hillary campaign as not very good. I was actually in Portugal right after the election, and someone said, was Hillary a bad candidate? And it's like, well, objectively, like she lost. Like that means she was a bad candidate. And so it doesn't matter. Politics is very binary. It's a very confusing and complicated and really frustrating world of yes or no. And there's all these very strange things. For instance, in 2012, Mitt Romney had, I think, like $100 million in the bank when he lost. Do you want to be the team that has $100 million that you could have spent and then lose? Like you're optimizing for the most bizarro world ever. It doesn't make any sense. And I think what happened in 2016 is the Hillary campaign over-indexed on analytics and under-indexed on kind of the traditional rules of politics, coupled with the fact that a lot of people just did not want her to be president. And so it just didn't work. And hopefully everyone is learning. It doesn't seem like any party is doing very well right now. And hopefully everyone's kind of learning from this experience and that we're going to figure out something interesting in 2018. Every day it's interesting.
Every day is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to one more question that was voted up. I'll call this relatively political. It's about fake news. We're going to go to that one. What do you like to read daily? Information to get news? Fake news or not fake news?
So the first question is, did anyone here get that email from Twitter that said, you retweeted fake news? Russian bots.
Interesting.
So Twitter sent this email out that was like, you participated in the fake Russian bot problem. And I feel like I'm a pretty, I know what's going on. I follow really robust news sources, or so I thought. But it turns out that it's really hard to find good news. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I used to read, I don't read newspapers. I don't believe in paper as a thing, which I was happy to hear they're paperless this year. So thank you. I just don't, so I don't read newspapers. I really believe in journalism. I really like kind of some of the journalism that BuzzFeed is doing, Vox is doing, some of these big organizations are doing. But at the same time, I don't know how to have a very, if I don't agree with something, how will I find an article that will tell me how to agree with it or how to see through their eyes? And so I think there's a lack of empathy, not necessarily with the journalism, but I think with ourselves. We just aren't very empathic towards others. And so it's also in our interfaces, and not to bring it back to technology, but our interfaces in our companies, we just don't have that empathy. But I don't know, I'm struggling with this myself. But to answer the question, I get all my news from Twitter. And so it's all based on this network. But I did something interesting about 2 years ago, which is I stopped following white men. And you laugh a little bit, but this drastically changed my bubble. my filter bubble. And it turned out that there's all these other people besides white men that also share really cool stuff. And a lot of news came out, and it really changed what I see, the world I see, whose lens I'm seeing through. Because of that, actually, I've been ahead of the curve on a few things that have been really interesting. I thought Trump was going to be president in August 2015, which I'm sad to say. I tweeted that, and I was like, oh, and here we are. So how about questions about politics? I mean, startups.
Yeah.
Since we're in Texas, and I want to break this.
We figured we'd riff off those for a couple. So let's. You talked about email. We talked about SMS. What do you think is the next big thing after that?
Ooh, this is a big one. I think messaging apps. Who here uses WeChat? Okay, who here uses WeChat in China? Okay, so a handful of people. So if you use WeChat in China, that thing is totally different than if you use WeChat in the US, and it is awesome. It is my favorite chat platform because it is so much. Did you know there's mutual funds in it? You can like invest in a mutual fund inside of WeChat. And like, it is bonkers. You can order a car, you can get laundry done, you can do whatever you want inside of WeChat. You can go to the most rural part of China and like buy some dumplings, and this, the person that just sold you dumplings is like, WeChat? Like, everyone uses WeChat for payments. It is this amazing, amazing platform, and we always underestimate it. And then when we think of, oh, we're gonna have this really great experience with chat commerce or messenger commerce, we keep in our heads that it has to be a chatbot. This kind of silly experience, but WeChat is just so innovative. It is so far ahead of where I'm seeing most people, myself included, think. I'm astounded that we don't have more people thinking about this.
Do you think WeChat will take off in North America?
No. I don't think it'll take off in North America because it is aggressively not localized. So even though it's very English, you can use it, you can very quickly click through and it's all Chinese all of a sudden. And as someone who doesn't know Chinese, it's very complicated to figure out what's happening.
Valid point. Very valid point.
But I really do think if you have friends that go to China often or in China, it used to be they could just send you a red packet and it would open up all the financial services inside of WeChat. But you should find someone that uses it and look at all the features they have. It's such a robust platform, and it really is the future. If you go anywhere in Southeast Asia, WeChat is accepted as a payment platform. And it's obviously, there's lots to, I wouldn't say copy, but maybe that's a good word. There's lots to copy from that.
Great. So you talked a lot about data and metrics and using data. You said everybody should have dashboards. And kind of two questions. One here is, how do you get people to actually really use them? And then a problem that I'm seeing in some companies is, how do you differentiate between true metrics and vanity metrics?
Well, I mean, personally, I love the vanity metrics. Just feels good.
Exactly the problem.
Yeah, but I think the real thing is what are you trying to achieve? With dashboards for myself, I like putting dashboards up around the company, and I like my personal dashboards. My personal dashboards are built by me for what I am interested in. The ambient dashboards are general things for the company. For a startup, for example, it might be your burn rate, so that people can calculate how much time they have left, so that they can work harder or what have you. I believe in being transparent about that. It could be revenue. It could be any of these things that are important for a startup. But it's ambient. It's something that you walk by and you look, oh, looks like we're doing well, and you go. At Threadless, we used to have an arrow that just pointed up or down. Were sales up or were they down? If they were down, we did work. If they were up, we fucked around. It wasn't maybe the most effective dashboard, but it really worked well for us. But it was this ambient thing. It's just like an arrow in the back. But for your personal dashboard, that's just what are you doing right now? It could be emails. It could be like what emails are important. It could be anything for your job. And that's the thing about dashboards. It doesn't have to be something that represents the company. It has to be something that represents you. And there's many dashboard platforms. I have a lot of dashboards in my house. I can tell the instantaneous temperature in the room. But really, dashboards are important, I think. But I didn't answer your question very well, sorry.
That's all right. It was entertaining nonetheless. That's good. That's good. Getting engagement, I guess, get them yourself. Make sure they're dashboards that you care about and the company cares about. If they're going too high, reset the goals so people get their ass to work.
That's a really important one. I think it's, if you constantly miss your goals, they're the wrong goals.
Okay. So the top question here, a lot of the audience at HEDNA, we have technology companies, we have startups, we have a variety of different things, but we have a huge a population of hoteliers that are here with no experience in multivariate testing. or some of the training you talked about. What is one way for a non-technical hotel companies to start bringing this practice into their culture?
That's a really hard question. I don't know the answer to that other than hire people who've grown up in that culture. There's always that weird company that long ago was data-driven. You know, hire leaders from that place, bring them in. Don't pay them more than any other leader because I don't think it's worthwhile like going way out of your way. But I think the key is how do you get leaders in? It has to come from the leadership. This is probably the most important thing, is it really has to come from leadership. If the leadership is not data-driven, the employees won't be data-driven, the goals won't be data-driven. And that's probably the most important thing and way to do that, is make sure the leadership does that. Great,
starts at the top and brings through the culture. Okay, final question as we wrap up time. Who or what was your spirit animal?
Oh boy.
Can we reveal?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I ever got there. I seriously just joined a VC firm and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And everyone just asked me what I was doing, and I was like, because I was really trying to learn how to build long companies. But maybe, you know, I have a ridiculous poodle. That is my spirit animal.
A poodle. That was not what I was going for. Okay, poodle.
A poodle or Motley Crue, the band.
Yes, a little bit more. Good. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.